Alright, so in part one of this video, we looked at a general reading for Scarlett O'Hara with no specific meanings and no specific question. And this was a way of exploring the contrast of a reading that uses specific questions and the contrast of a reading that doesn't. And so in this reading, we're going to read for her again, but we're going to deal with a situation where she is asking us something specific, and we are using a spread with assigned meanings. Now, my spreads, I tend not to use made spreads. I adapt things that are out there, or I'll use a basic 3-card spread or whatnot. I find 4 lately is my biggest draw. Because I always like to end with a piece of advice. So really I do a 3-card reading with an add-on that's just, here's something I should know, here's something I could do. Because I really do think that readings are at their best when they're helpful in some way. If they tell us stuff that we already know, or if they tell us stuff we're scared of or that we want, it's great and it's impressive, but it's a parlor trick. If we get something out of it and we can be active in our life, that's a little more interesting to me, and that's how I came to reading. Fortune telling is cool, but it doesn't really do us anything. You know, there are readers out there who say they can predict a death, and maybe that's possible. It probably is, but what does that get us? I mean, it might in some cases tell us that we have to, you know, rush and appreciate what we have, but we all know that's an inevitability. It's everything that happens in between that is the stuff that we really need to care about, in my opinion. So I would never predict a death in a reading, at least not for a real person. I think in the Hamlet reading I did, there was a hint that things could go that way. But for a real person, I don't think that's helpful. Anyway, questions can change the tenor of a reading. So in Scarlett's first reading, we got the sense that she wanted something really badly, and she was being really combative and creating a lot of discord to get it. Now we're going to do a reading where she asks us a question, and the question that she asks us is this. The man I love is marrying another woman. I don't know what to do. I want to tell him about my feelings. I feel like if I do, he'll leave the woman and come to me. What should I do? What'll happen? So there's her question. She wants to know what's going to happen with this man that she's in love with, who's marrying someone else. Should she tell him? Should she not? She feels like if she does, he's going to come running to her. What's going to happen? So we're going to do a 4-card reading, basically a 3-card reading with a word of advice at the end. The first card is going to be where things are headed right now. The second is going to be the path that she'll wind up on if she does tell him. This third card will be the path she'll wind up if she doesn't. And then the 4th card, again, a word of advice. So let's start in. So card number 1, again, where things are headed right now, we've got the 5 of Cups. The path she'll wind up on if she tells him, we have the Star. If she doesn't tell him, we've got the 9 of Wands. And our word of advice is the 7 of Swords. Let me move this over. All right. Okay. I'm going to get in closer than I did in the last video. This deck is so gorgeous, but it's hard to get on video. So we start with the 5 of Cups. And the 5 of Cups is where things are headed. And so I think what this suggests is that the way things are headed right now is toward an emotional upset. Scarlett's feeling, or she's in the direction of feeling that she's lost out on something that she wants, and cups are often associated with relationships. They're water, they're emotions, so I think this card may indicate that either way, things are headed in such a way that she is not going to end up in the relationship she wants to. She's not going to win that prize that she wants. No matter what happens, she's going to be in the situation of not achieving the relationship she longs for. The 5 of Cups is traditionally that sense of sort of looking down at what I lost. There's a sense of spilled milk. We also get that in the 8 of Cups a little bit, but the 5 of Cups always makes me think of don't cry over spilled milk. So whatever choice she makes, it does not look good for the relationship that she wants. But I will say that the 5s are the midpoint, so she's not down and out yet. She's still got a lot left emotionally in life, and there's a lot around her supporting her. It's hard to see, but if you look in the water, that's probably easier to see. You can see these sort of spirits and fairies and water sylphs there in the water. Which this is more specific than the weight deck, but in the weight deck we've still got the cups that are standing in the 5. So it's a similar thing, that there are supports and things happening in life, some things that are bubbling below the surface. That means she can get something she wants out of life, even if it's not this relationship. There are things at work in her life that mean she can get things that she wants, just not this. But there is an emotional richness that means that she can be happy. She can get what she wants. She can get things that she wants, I should say. Now, looking at the path that she'll probably wind up on, if she tells the man that she cares about, we've got the Star. And again, I know a little bit more about Scarlett now, because she asked a question. But I also know a little bit about Scarlett just from knowing who Scarlett is. And so it's hard to not let that contaminate the reading somehow, or contaminate isn't a great word, but become a part of the reading. And in this case, either way, I can't help but think of the Star in the dramatic sense. Telling him may mean, based on the 5, that she's not going to necessarily get the relationship that she wants, but that she will wind up sparkling as the center of attention. This being a major arcana card, it may mean that that's something that's more important than the relationship. This center of attention, this sparkling, effervescent thing that people can't stop looking at and talking about. So she may tell him, and whatever happens, whatever he says, she'll feel like she's up there in the firmament for everyone to see, shimmering and like a firework, making everyone ooh and ah. But there's also a less diva-ish sense to this, and it could mean that the telling him will make him feel better, because there might be in that act of telling him a sense of peace, a sense of honesty, and the softness and loveliness that comes from expressing something that's deeply felt. There could be a gentleness in letting go. It could be a release, and it could allow her to open up and move on. And she may find that release, and that life opens up and lights the way to the next step. The way that the stars sort of light up the night sky. So that's a very gentle, lovely thing. If she tells him things, she may not get the relationship she wants, but things could work out nicely. Now, if she doesn't tell him, we get the 9 of Wands, and this one's interesting. It suggests a little bit of a stranger path. This is, again, similar to Waite, and Smith, although it's a really interesting interpretation of it, but there's still a defensiveness, and there's a pride, where the Waite one is a little more broken. I think this suggests that if she doesn't tell him, that she may have to devote a lot of time to and creative energy to keeping him from knowing, or protecting her ego and defending that ego against other people who may know how she feels. I'm wondering if not telling him may make her feel like there's always hope for the relationship, and that she'll constantly be creating ways to attack and try to get what she wants, that she'll constantly be fighting with herself, with the world to get this, and that may not let her move on. It may also mean that she gets somewhat defensive and shut off. This defensiveness may cause her to not allow another relationship into her life because she's so defensive about this one and so concerned with this one. So sort of keeping the pent-up energy of not telling him may cause her to sort of bottle up a lot of creative energy and shut out others, or let it spill out into a constant sense of, this relationship is still possible, I know I can make it happen. Then we get into a word of advice, which is the final card, and we've got the Seven of Swords. And I think very, very simply, the Seven of Swords is a warning. And it says no matter what you choose, don't create unnecessary conflict. Don't be sneaky, don't be coy, don't try to be clever, don't take what's not yours, don't be covert, don't use these nefarious methods of getting what you want. This card suggests those things aren't going to work. I think it suggests that she's brilliant and sharp-witted enough to come up with all of these nefarious and tricky techniques, but they're not going to win her what she wants. And probably acting that way won't win her any friends either. no matter what happens, no matter what path she takes, the card is saying try to focus on decent, civilized results and behavior. Be transparent in your actions. Don't be clandestine. Don't be sneaky. No throwing on a cloak and a mask and sneaking off into the middle of the night. I think this card says don't be shady. So we've got a lot going on here. I think probably equally as much as the reading without a question, except here we've got some definitive stuff. We've got a sense that she wants a relationship because that's what she asked about, and it's probably not going to happen. If she tells him, she may find that she comes into a peaceful, lovely, shimmering place. She may get to be the center of attention and have everyone feel bad for her. She may enjoy that. There may be a performance aspect to this that may be more important than the relationship. If she doesn't tell him, she could pent up a lot of feeling about this and wind up constantly on the hunt or constantly shutting things out. And then we get a word of advice, which is don't be sneaky and shady. Be good, be civil, be decent. So this is a very different reading from the last one, and there's some actionable things, which is mostly, it might not hurt to tell him, in that you got to be a good person. Sneakiness isn't going to get you anywhere. Now this is also an interesting reading because it's sort of everything happens. If we look at what we know about Scarlett O'Hara and we compare it to this reading, we know that the Five of Cups is right. She does not end up in that relationship. She does tell him. She does become the center of attention. Everyone is talking about her all the time. But even though she tells him, this still happens. So in the reading I said, if she doesn't tell him, this will be the path that she winds up. She ends up being crafty and spending all her time trying to come up with ways of getting him. She does that anyway. So it's almost like both of these things happen. Now it's interesting because, it sort of says maybe the reading is wrong then. Because she tells him, but this happens anyway. She does this anyway. And that's an interesting thing because this just may be who she is. Just because she does this and gets the sense out of it doesn't mean that this isn't something she's going to do. And we know, if we know Scarlett, that she is rather sneaky, and that she goes and does hurt a lot of people, and she's very covert and lying and clandestine and sneaky, and she still doesn't get what she wants. So it's interesting to compare a reading like this to what we know ends up happening. In a real reading, we don't necessarily have that luxury, but it's interesting to look at things and explore what that can tell us about a reading. She may choose this path and still wind up on the same path that she would have been on had she not told him, because that's just the way she is. That's just the way her life works, and that's just the way things are going. And it's interesting, though, because if she didn't do this, if she wasn't sneaky, if she had taken this advice, if anyone had given her that advice, things may have turned out differently. Maybe she would have wound up happy with someone else. You don't know. You never know. Scarlett's pretty restless, but she certainly would have avoided hurting some people. And she does, in the course of Gone with the Wind, hurt quite a few people. So anyway, there are 2 readings for Scarlett O'Hara. This is the second of 2. The first without a spread and a question. This one with a spread and a question. And anyway, I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts about what they would have done differently, or if they try this with a character and they look at the differences in the reading they get. I'd love to chat about this stuff, so feel free to post comments or share, and I hope to hear what you come up with.